But good afternoon again. So before we get started with our speaker, I have the great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Laysha Ward. So Laysha started at Marshall Fields in 1991, has had 32 years of leadership experience at Target, where she is currently a strategic advisor. And I recently learned today that she will be actually retiring after 30 some odd years, so in the next couple of weeks. So very excited for her on that too. So, but prior to that, she was the Executive Vice President and Chief External Engagement Officer overseeing Target's enterprise-wide approach to engage and deepen relationships with cross-sector stakeholders to drive positive business and community impact. Laysha received a bachelor's degree from Indiana University and her master's from the University of Chicago. She currently sits on the boards of Denny's Corporation and United Airlines. Now, on to our speaker. When Thasunda Brown Duckett graduated from college, her father, Otis Brown, asked her to review his retirement plan. It was then she had to tell him that after 40 years of working in a warehouse, scanning boxes, he just didn't have enough. He had opted out of a company's generous 401k match available to all employees. But with his daughter's guidance, he caught up. But it is no accident that she now leads TIAA, a company whose mission is to make sure that those who retire can do so with dignity. So born in Rochester, New York, and raised in Texas, where her family moved for more opportunity, Thasunda got her degree in finance and marketing from the University of Houston and her MBA from Baylor. A product of the Inroads internship program, a nonprofit that provides students exposure to corporate America, she was selected for an internship at mortgage guarantor Fannie Mae when all of the spots had already been filled. She became a director of emerging markets at Fannie Mae when she led the implementation of national strategies designed to increase home ownership among Black and Hispanic Americans. At JP Morgan Chase, she led the mortgage sales team of 4,000 bankers, was CEO of the Auto Finance Group, and eventually of the Chase Consumer Bank, overseeing over $600 billion in deposits and 50,000 employees. In May of 2021, she became CEO of the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association of America, TIAA, a company founded in 1918 by Andrew Carnegie to help college professors save for retirement. TIAA now serves over 5 million active and retired employees, participating at more than 15,000 institutions, and has $1.3 trillion in combined assets under management, with holdings in more than 50 countries. TIAA is the largest global investor in farmland, the second largest grower of wine grapes in the United States, and the third largest commercial real estate manager in the world. TIAA has also been named one of the world's most ethical companies 9 years in a row. Formerly TIAA CREF in 2014, TIAA acquired Chicago's Nuveen Investments for $6.2 billion. A Nike board member and one of only 2 female Black CEOs in the Fortune 500 today, Thasunda has dedicated her career to addressing financial inequities and creating generational wealth for all. I am so honored to welcome to the Economic Club of Chicago, Rosie and Otis Brown's daughter, Thasunda Brown Duckett.
It is so wonderful to be here today in conversation with you. Thank you for coming to Chicago. Great. You know, I love this community, and it is my pleasure to extend that love to you on behalf of the Economic Club of Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I often call her T, and so I asked for her permission to refer to her as T. So we're going to keep this a really open and engaging conversation, like we're in the living room, right?
Okay.
Okay? I have admired and followed you for quite some time. And I've been struck by your ability to lead effectively in business, in the community, and with your family. And from my vantage point, you've done that with purpose, with grit and grace, with resilience and passion in a way that's been incredibly inspiring to me, and I know countless others. And so I wanted us to start our conversation today by hearing more about your journey, your personal journey, a little bit more about how Rosie and Otis shaped who you are and your life and leadership journey and the choices, quite frankly, that you've made, including where you've gone with your career.
Great. Well, first, it's so awesome to be here. The energy in this room is just electric. So I don't know what's going on in Chicago, but wow. Wow. Absolutely. It's amazing. So my dad always says, people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And you heard a little bit about it, but let me paint the picture, and I think it will be clear why I always talk about my mom and dad. My father was born in the segregated South in Louisiana. My mother was born in the segregated South in Alabama. And so I'm first generation full integration. My mother is a retired educator. My father worked for a company, scanning boxes, driving trucks, just doing what he needed to do to try to make ends meet. I would say that we were long on love and short on money. We were big on ambition. My father would sign us up for karate, and I never got past white belt, yellow stripe, because there were 3 of us trying to participate in karate. He would sign us up for piano lessons. I should just say lesson, because after the first lesson, that was piano. So my mother and my father had big dreams, but money was a barrier at times. I would also say growing up at a very young age, I saw the fight in my parents. I remember when my father would have to stand up for us when it came to sports and injustices that we were experiencing. I remember being called the N-word at the age of 5, and my mother told me to call her one back because she's the ignorant one. And so there were so many life lessons that I learned, but I also learned the power of seeing everyone. I learned the power of empathy. My mother, being an educator, would tell us that if you're at school and you see a child that does not have a meal, you do not laugh, you give them your meal, and somehow, some way, you will have a meal when you get home, even though sometimes when we would get home, I only saw baking soda in the refrigerator, but somehow, some way, a meal was provided. Sports was a real passion of ours.
And still is.
And still is. Shout out to March Madness, the women.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love the men too.
But
it feels really good to show the power of exposure and what women can do on the big stage and just turn it on. We could go on about that.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
Later.
But sports played a real important moment in my life. So fast forward, I would say there were 2 disruptors that got me here, and one was mentioned earlier. The power of information. There was a woman and a man by the name of Mr. and Miss Patterson, and they told me about a program called Inroads. I never heard of Inroads. I never even heard of corporate America, if I'm honest. But they exposed me to Inroads, and Fannie Mae was looking for 1 intern. And I interviewed, and a woman by the name of Valerie Manning went back to Fannie Mae and said, we found our 1 intern. Her name is Sarah. But Valerie Manning, who did not have a power title, you get no extra credit on bonus because you hired an extra intern. But for whatever reason, Valerie Manning said, but there's this other girl. I say this publicly because I want everyone to realize that we all have agency and power. We rent our titles, we own our character. And Valerie Manning chose to show up and say those words that allowed me the opportunity to start in corporate America. So we should always use agency and open our mouth and use our voice when you see something that you think could be beneficial to a company, even if that's not your minimum requirement.
She made
an excellent choice. Secondly, I would say the power of information. So with this story, without Mr. and Ms. Patterson telling me about this program, I would not have known. And so I believe passionately that information is power, and we need to make sure that we're sharing information freely and not judging and thinking that that information would not be appropriate for this girl whose dad works in a warehouse. So information and advocacy, I learned at a very young age before I even understood what advocacy was all about. And so I started my career at Fannie Mae. I was in Dallas, and I loved Fannie Mae. I drank the Kool-Aid. The mission is our business. The business is our mission.
So what did you love so much about it?
I love the fact that the mission was about home ownership, something that I did not have. My parents did not buy their first home until I helped them buy their first home. And so to understand the importance of home ownership and understanding that it should be made available for everyone should have access, was something that to me was core and something that I think we could all relate to. When you have or live in a safe community, so many things are unlocked. You can dream bigger. You can see, you can go to a library and have access to great books. So home ownership to me is core to the fabric of our country, and one that we need to do everything that we can to make sure that people had access. So I had a great run at Fannie Mae, but I wanted to get closer to the consumer, and no matter how much I loved Fannie Mae, it was in the secondary market. Yeah. And so I was on Fannie Mae Business and was at a Chase event, and the CEO of the mortgage company asked me one question, and that one question
do you recall the one question?
It was a question about how did I view Chase or something. I don't remember, but I know I answered it honestly. And
authentically,
honestly, just what I thought was the right answer for the question. And he then wanted to know more about me. He went to visit me in LA because I lived out there at the time working for Fannie Mae, and the opportunity presented itself to join Chase. That was about 6 months after I said to myself, I want to get closer to the consumer. And so I joined JP Morgan Chase, moved from California to New Jersey, started in the mortgage company. And I remember this moment. My aspiration at the time was to run a P&L. Now, when I say P&L, I'm talking manager of 10. You know, like I would be doing it. And when the opportunity came, I was 6 months pregnant with my second child. And I literally almost talked myself out of the position and almost gave permission for him to say, I take it back. Because he was giving me this opportunity. And
was there self-doubt? Why were you
It was like all of the mental gymnastics that are in our heads. Like, you know I'm 6 months pregnant, right? You know it's going to be a Schedule C. This is not normal weight gain. This is a baby. And you know I'm going to be out. I was saying all of this to him as if he would have said, you're right. I would have been like, you're right too. And I share this story publicly because I'm sure I'm not the only one that sometimes when that moment of opportunity comes in your mind, it's not the right moment, and you almost talk yourself out of the opportunity.
But it was the right moment.
It was the right moment.
My grandmother always says, things may not happen when you want them, but they're always right on time.
It was absolutely the right moment. And what was great about the moment is, one, he was like, you're coming back, right? And I'm like, absolutely. And so I love that part of it, because when we talk about opportunity, and we know there's not a lot of women that are ascending, and we know that sometimes as women elevate, these moments happen and you may not take the moment. And many times you may have a male boss, but the male boss was the one that said, you're coming back, right? This is not a big deal. And so I just think that's an important conversation, because even though we may not have as many women as we need and deserve and should, it doesn't mean that we don't have advocacy and we don't have leaders that want us to win and see our talent and can understand that you may need to, accomplish other family goals, but that does not mean that you cannot continue to ascend and add outside value to the company.
Absolutely.
And so that, I think, was a very important moment for me. And then, You know, it kept going and became the CEO of auto. I think that's an important message moving into the auto industry, because many times we talk about why you would want to have diversity. And I know we'll hit that. But the reason why I would also share a counter narrative is the client base does not have to look like me in order for me to establish a great relationship and deliver alpha.
Yep.
And I think that's important as leaders, because if we don't subscribe to that notion, then you clearly would not necessarily see me as the CEO leading an auto industry that is not as diverse with female representation or people of color. And at the time, I was younger. But it ended up being just a phenomenal run. And I met clients that I'm lifelong friends with, and the results were there. And so I just think that is a moment that we should not limit the box of why you want to have talent in your workforce. And you should not limit the box of the value that they can provide, even if they may represent a different box than their client base. They understand how to connect with relationships. They understand the business. They're going to deliver outside alpha. And by the way, you may end up having even stronger relationships as a result.
I think it says a lot about your leadership, though, as well, right? You are an exceptional leader, a curious learner, and you build strong teams, diverse, high-performing teams, and you deliver results. So it also says a lot about you. Right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
It leads me to a question I'd love to press on, which is about your leadership style. Because in each of these sort of life stages and career stages that you've been walking us through, including this incredible stage that you're on as one of the few CEOs of color and women of color as a CEO, you bring an authenticity to your leadership. But how would you describe your leadership? And part two of that, how is that leadership approach helping you shape the transformation that you and your team are undertaking at TIAA?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to Otis and Rosie Brown. You know, I did the UPenn Wharton School of Business commencement, and I said everything I learned about being a CEO, I learned as a child. I learned character. I learned grit, tenacity, perseverance. I learned understanding root cause analysis, because I understood that some of the opportunities of my melanin were not presented that may cause people to think we're less than, but if you do a root cause, it started from exclusionary practices. And so I then could have an appreciation, or at least an understanding, of why things may seem more difficult, or why my father would say, you have to be 2 times better, which is very stressful. But that was the reality. And so having that backdrop and understanding the power of compassion and seeing people and understanding what it means when someone doesn't see you, those are things that I learned and observed growing up. And so when I define my leadership style, I'd say first, it's with a bold vision. My father told me to reach for the moon, because even if I missed, I would be among the stars. And so as a CEO, as a leader, you have to have bold vision. Vision that will allow everyone to see themselves in it as part of the solution. So bold vision. Teamwork. I talked about playing sports. My brothers played sports on any given day. That means there's an appreciation of the power of team. It's a we thing we say at TIAA. I cannot do anything without my team. And so it's important that you field the team that have all different skill sets, all different backgrounds, but we wear one jersey. And the character are the ties that bind us, and the passion that we have for this vision and this mission is the power of team. So teamwork. I have a lot of passion, and I think as leaders, it's important to show your passion in however way you show it. We're all very different in terms of our personality styles, but I am committed to what we do. And I am committed to the people that I'm privileged to surround myself with. Intellectual curiosity, my team would say, I ask the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th question. And if you can answer the 5th question, we'll have a great jam session. If we stop at the first or second, we may have to go back and reconvene later. But I do think intellectual curiosity is so important in leadership. I'm curious to understand what are the people dealing with that are facing our clients? What challenges are they seeing? So I want to go to the meetings. I want to listen to the people in the call center and understand what are they hearing so that I can have a better appreciation when you have multiple systems and how they're clicking and trying to navigate and wanting to do great work. So intellectual curiosity, I think, is so important, especially in the environment that we're in where everything is changing. You have to be curious. And with curiosity breeds agility. If you are curious, you're open to the possibility that you may have to pivot. And then finally, process, process, process.
I'm a fan of
Process to lead to outcomes. You can have the greatest vision, the greatest team, the greatest intellectual curiosity and passion, but if it is not yielding the outcomes, it's not worth it. And process is so important because process should transcend you. If you are here and have the privilege, especially for me, to lead a company over 100 years, clearly, Alpha should not start and end with me. I am just having the ability to carry a baton during this moment, and all the great things that this team will do together, it shall transcend all of us, and the only way you can have staying power is to have operating practices that are built to last when you are not around.
Amen, amen,
Yeah.
amen. I could not agree more. Process is sexy, trust me, it is.
Absolutely.
And it allows sustainability and
Correct.
legacy and things that are durable business models and org models that I think is
Absolutely.
so important. So I could not be more happy that you raised that point. But I would also say, as I was doing my homework,
Okay.
not just my own experience with you, but others who I know who have worked with and for you and around you, I also heard a lot about this ability to build a great culture.
Yeah.
That you're a culture builder.
Yeah.
And culture really helps bring strategy to life.
Yes.
So how do you do that so effectively? Because to a person, I heard best leader I've worked for or with uses her power to empower others and is a great culture builder.
Right. I mean, we've all heard culture eats strategy for lunch. Culture is the attraction. And in this environment where you are competing around the globe, in this environment where there's so many amazing companies and individuals have choice, why are they going to choose your company? And I believe culture has to be at the forefront. And culture is the model that you project. You know, you can say you're authentic, but how do you show up? If I am saying I am striving to be the best version of Thasunda, that's what authenticity means to me. I am just trying to be the best version of me. That creates space for you to be the best version of you and be you. The best shot that you have as a leader in getting the best productivity from your teammates is if they show up the best version of them. If they are taking on this extra task of being someone that they're not, or trying to fit in, that is not positive return. So you are not getting maximum productivity. I also think culture is about setting that vision so that when you are pushing the team, when you are saying that is not good enough, we can do better. If you have been clear on the vision, even though that feedback is not exciting, but you know it's not personal. She wants to get the best out of you. And by the way, I am open to the feedback as well. And one of the things that I share with my team, they're sitting right in front of me, is what's the counter narrative? Here's my view, but give me the counter narrative. You have to invite culture into the room. And the only way that culture is real is what people experience. It's not what you say. It's not the awards. It's what you feel. And you have to earn it every day. And I think having a North Star, having a vision, being clear, making sure people understand that I am right there with you. I will roll up my sleeves, but I will also give my power away because I want you to be great. That to me is an attraction, and it's one that people understand. If you're going to partner with me, you know the rules of engagement, and you know that I will go to bat for you and for this company, but we have to never lose sight of the North Star. And that means there will be hard decisions that sometimes individuals may not like, but hopefully they can respect, because it's not personal in terms of you, the individual. It's about doing the best thing for the company. So culture is everything, but culture is what you model.
Yeah, love that. And I often say it needs to not be on the walls, but in the halls.
Yes.
Right? Keeping it real. And
Absolutely.
clearly that's something you do exceptionally well.
Yep.
Purpose, culture, values, process. So many nuggets. I hope you're taking notes, right? I want to build on this idea of passion, because you are a very passionate leader. And one of the topics that I know you're passionate in terms of trying to drive change is around closing the gap with retirement income savings.
Yes.
And trying to close that gap for Americans, and especially women and people of color, where that wealth gap is significant.
Right.
So I'd love to hear you tell us, kind of, where does that passion come from? Why is that a priority? And what are the kinds of things that you and your team are doing through programs, public policy, and other initiatives to close that gap?
Well, what's so great about the team is that they provide me such great insight. And I mentioned root cause. So what are the facts? The facts are 40% of all Americans do not have enough to retire. That's urban, suburban, blue state, red state. It's everywhere. And then when you look at, well, what else do you see after that 40%? You realize that women retire with 30% less. You realize that 54% of African Americans do not have enough saved for retirement. 64% of Hispanics do not have access to a workplace plan. 41% of young people between the ages of 25 and 45 are not contributing to their 401k or 403b plan. Those are the facts. So it should be no wonder why I have a fight and a fire in my belly. I shared this story about my father, and I think when you're dealing with a crisis, and I do think we have a retirement crisis, it's about an individual. It's about a family. By a show of hands, who knows someone personally that does not have enough money for a secure retirement? And you might be helping them out. Look around the room. This is our problem. How are we ever going to close the wealth gap, for example, with people of color, when we are transferring debt, not wealth? When we are having to take care of mom and dad, and they may no longer live together. We may be married, have a significant other, a partner, or choosing to be single. So we're having to split that dollar now 3 ways. And then if we decide to have children, we want to live in a decent neighborhood. We want to travel with our friends, make it make sense. And so the reason why I think this is an urgent situation is because we know that we are also living longer. We know that we are living in the time of the largest intergenerational groupings. From the silver, boomers, Gen Z, alpha, there's so many generations living right now, and we're living longer. So this is an American crisis. This is not a woman's crisis, a black person's crisis. This is our crisis. And we know the challenges of Social Security.
Do you think most people see it as a crisis? Is that a well-known crisis, T?
Well, I am here talking to the Economic Club of Chicago. I am sure it will get out now, if it's not already. But it's the facts. And so what are we doing about it? We at TIAA launched what we call a retirement bill of rights, because we know this is not something that one company can solve. We know that this is not just about policy. We know that we need all of us working together. And so with this retirement bill of rights, it's really shining a light on the statistics and then giving simple recommendations and solutions on what we can all do better. And so a few things that I would offer up is, one, if you all want to be part of the Coalition of the Willing, please join us, because it takes all of us.
How would people join you?
Thasunda at TIAA.
Or her team, who's
or
right
my
here
team.
at that table.
Yeah, the team right here. Reach out to me or any of our colleagues, because it really takes all of us working together in a few areas. One, we're spending a lot of time around policy. We know that the Secure Act 2.0 did a long, good job in helping to make sure that we have a policy to ensure that more people can have access. And we're working with others to think about, and with Congress, on what more can we do to improve. Simple things. We believe passionately in auto enrollment. We all should have plans at our companies that auto enrolls everyone. Everyone, including the people in the mailroom. Do not assume that because this person may be part of the lower wage earner, that they do not want to save for retirement. Do not make that assumption. Make it available. They can choose to opt out, and then next year you opt them in. That is something I would ask all of you to check and see, does your work plan provide that? Secondly, it's auto escalation. We know that when you start, you may not contribute the max amount of what your company can match. You may put in a little. Auto escalate 1%. Again, they can take it back down if they can't do that, but the next year you do it again. What studies find is that when you auto enroll, and if someone opts out and you auto enroll again, they stay. But we all know that someone could have had a moment and they opted out that 1 year, and that one moment lost 20 years of compounding. That one moment had a really bad outcome over time. And so simple things, auto enrollment, auto escalation. What we're doing at TIAA is also look at your data. Are people participating and taking full advantage? And if they are not, what are we doing about it? Give the information to your manager of 10 and make sure you can have the brown bag lunch and talk about it. Make sure the benefits are working hard. Are they naming beneficiaries or not? We know the answers to the test, especially as leaders leading companies. It is our responsibility to not just stop at the wonderful awards that we receive, but to make sure it's working hard for every individual in your company, because the outcome can be someone like Otis Brown that had access to a 401k. He did have his pension because it was provided. But when the daughter has to tell a father that he does not have enough, but to recognize that there was a plan that was there, but that plan didn't reach the guy in the mailroom or the guy scanning boxes, that is a call to action. And so this crisis is real. We all feel it. The question is, what can we do about it as leaders? And it takes good policy. It takes the voice of business, and it takes the awareness and the education to individuals. The last thing that I would say about this is young people. Do not assume young people do not care about retirement. They do care. It is up to us to make it relevant and clear and meet them where they are and talk to them in a way that will compel them to take action. And the big piece is the word compounding that we all love here at the Economic Club of Chicago, making sure that they understand what they're leaving on the table, the tax benefit. They're leaving an employer match. So you're saying, I'm good with the base salary. You can keep this benefit. And they're losing the ability to change the course of their life and the people who they love life. And I believe that if we talk about it younger, we can change the course and the direction, but it is something that we all have to get involved in and understand that this is an American issue that is really burdening taxpayers. It's causing a lot of stress in the household, and it's the worst feeling for people as they age to know that they're a burden on their children because they just was not clear or understood or had the ability to make different decisions in their earning years.
So one of the things I think you're doing an exceptional job of is bringing more storytelling to this,
yes,
right?
We have to make it real.
Make it real, make sure people are aware of the issue, personalizing it so that they can really understand it, and making it less theoretical,
yes,
and making it practical.
By the show of hands, it's real for all of us. So this is why I think it's such a real issue, and I would say what I am happy about, it's one of the few issues that can garner bipartisan support, because you cannot do this without good policy. And so that, to me, leaves me with optimism that we can get things done that benefits everyone and allows us to be able to close the wealth gap. You won't close the wealth gap if you're having to subsidize your family and not have enough to start building your nest egg and your investment strategy. So I think it's something that I'm passionate about. We at TIAA and Naveen are passionate about it. And the good news is I think we can make real progress on this topic.
It helps be a foundation of a strong democracy.
Absolutely.
To wrestle with this and make progress on it. And I love how you also identified some of the biggest barriers,
yes,
to retirement today. something I think that all of us can walk away with thinking about not only what can I be doing for myself. I will be retiring in 2 weeks, so I've been working on my plan, but have many people in my life, friends, family, who are still wrestling with this. And so,
Yeah, I mean, the power stat, 53 million Americans don't have access to a workplace plan. 53 million. And we all know that many of the accumulation of our wealth is coming from, you know, our workplace plans to be able to have that nest egg. And so this is a real issue, but I do think making sure that we can address the savings gap, that's why I think that's important to make sure that we're helping people get on the savings plan as early as possible. We also have to address the guarantee gap because we know Social Security was never intended to be the only guarantee. And we know that pensions have gone down materially since the 70s. And we know that within 401k plans or 403b plans, we want to make sure that in addition to exposure to equities and bonds, we want to make sure that there is insurance, that there is that guarantee that you cannot outlive to be part of your allocation. And that is something that we're really talking to others and our clients and as a matter of good policy to make sure that we can design plans that can address some of the real barriers to helping people have a more secure retirement.
So again, I'm taking lots of notes, even though I'm about to retire from Target, not life. So I want to make sure if I can live as long as my great-great-grandmother, who is 105, I have some more saving to do. So I plan to stay with this.
And that, I think that's such a good point, the 105, because, you know, I think I'm going to live to 110. But the reality is, everyone always says, you know, how long do you plan to live? Like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that's the right question. I think the question is, can I be confident? Yeah. So I don't know how long, you don't know, we don't know, but the real question is, can I be confident that I'm going to be okay? And I think that's the question that we want to make sure that when we're sitting down and talking about plan and planning, that it's a confidence factor is what people are really looking for. Will I be confident? Will I be okay as I age that I will have enough? Will I run out of money? Because I don't know how long I'm going to live. And again, hopefully all of us in this room will have a very healthy and many more chapters in terms of living a very long time, but not feeling burdened by that.
Will it be enough? And again, to your point, enough for me and others in my circle who I may be supporting and helping as well. When you mention confidence, I want to pivot a bit to the economy. I'm curious to hear a bit about your sort of confidence or view on the outlook for the stock market or the economy overall, and in particular what your thoughts are on the Fed and where rates might go.
Well, I mean, overall, the U.S. economy is strong. I mean, when you look at companies' balance sheets, they're healthy, they're strong. Consumer confidence continues to remain solid, even though there are some concerns on how consumers are feeling in the near term. When we look at some of the underlying fundamentals, we'll see the unemployment data, I think, will come out on tomorrow. But you're seeing that there was a beat on jobs, 185. I think the forecast was around 150, so there was a beat. That could have pressure on wage because wages ticked up a little bit. I think the question that's on everyone's mind, of course, is inflation and interest rates. You know, I think our Fed, Powell, has been very clear that we want to get inflation down to the 2%. And so I know that there is a lot of excitement about 6 rate dips in the new year, decreases. That's not going to happen. I think now folks are thinking anywhere from 1 to 3, who knows? But I don't see that happening in the short term. I think it'll be in the middle or the latter part of the year. But I think he's been very clear he wants to see some of that data with some of the actions that have been taken, see what does this do and what pulls through. Interest rates, I think, continues to also be a big question for many people. And what does that mean, especially when you look at that in concert with inflation? If you're trying to buy a home, it's causing more to buy a house. If you're trying to buy groceries, it's more expensive. Gas is more expensive. And so I do think that we have a situation where there's still a lot of uncertainty. And when you look at the stock market, there's a lot of volatility. It's been on a run lately, but you know, it's been up and down. And I think that when you also just recognize the backdrop that we're in, The geopolitical environment is still very high. We still have two really big wars going on around the world. We have an election in our country, and you have elections going on around the world that leads to a lot of uncertainty. And so I think the bottom line here is that there is a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of shoots, as Jim says, some green shoots that are coming down. There's a lot of cash on the sidelines. You know, cash is an asset class. There's trillions of dollars that are pent up. So I do think that as things continue to improve, and I do believe that it will improve, we may have a slight recession, but I do think we'll see
for a while.
For a while.
I mean,
we've been saying a lot of things for a while, but you know, when it comes back, it's going to come back roaring because there's a lot of cash on the sidelines, and we know that the PE market has been slower than expected in terms of IPOs, et cetera. But for me, I think if you ask the question around the stock market, I'd say for us at Naveen and TIAA, top line, I'd say neutral on global equities. I'd say definitely an overweight on fixed income. And given the inflationary environment, I'd say opportunity in real assets.
Notes, but no forward-looking statements from this.
None, not at all.
Okay, all right. So I'd love to pivot once again to another topic in the headlines beyond the economy, which is this DE&I conversation, right? And the pushback, quite frankly, that we've been seeing around diversity, equity, and inclusion in ESG issues. So I would love to hear your point of view around the importance of, or lack thereof, of DE&I and ESG efforts, and how is that taking shape at TIAA?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a DEI room, by the way. It's a diverse room. There's so much energy, so you know there's some equity here. And there's a lot of inclusion when I look at the tables. And when I think about what's happening, and I've said this before, diversity, equity, inclusion. Those are values that we're raising all of our children to embrace and understand. We want our children to embrace differences when they're at school. We want every person to feel like they have an equitable shot, and that if there's something getting in the way, we will do all that we can to make sure that you have a fair opportunity. And inclusion, don't we all want inclusion? And somehow those words have just become something that can feel threatening. These words have become something that could feel that there is an equation of less than. My view, and then I want to talk about the view at TIAA, is that I also go back to history. Inclusion is new for us. Inclusion is new. It wasn't until the 70s that laws were off books. Women having leave did not happen until there was a lot more women in the workforce getting proximate to the challenges and then fighting for those rights to be able to have leave and have protection. ADA is in the 90s. My point is, inclusionary practices are new because we've had a history of exclusionary practices and always associated meritocracy in the backdrop of exclusionary practices. And now we don't have those laws, and we have a very diverse society, and we're getting comfortable with wanting to understand what that means. And so I just think that for us, it boils down to talent. If you are a leader and you are running a company, you do not want to have any restrictions on opening up the aperture for talent. And if you believe that talent is created equally, opportunity is not. And if you understand history, even within your own company, then you would always want to make sure that there's no residue of practices that could preclude anyone from having an opportunity to be their very best. If there was not a ramp in the building get a ramp, because I know that there are people that are very talented. They just needed a ramp to get into the office. Get a ramp. But that was a fight. And so my point is, DEI, to me, as a CEO, is about talent. I want to open up the aperture of talent. I want to make sure that everyone can see themselves at our company. And I want to ensure that when they come, they can feel the culture of inclusion. Everyone, men, women, GLBTQ+, first-gen immigrant, whatever it is, I want you to bring all of that to the table to ensure that you can bring your perspective to help us solve very complex problems that we are navigating as leaders. The last thing that I will say about this is that I'm very proud to work for a company that has over a 100-year history in this. Andrew Carnegie saw that there was a group of people who was educating the world's most brilliant minds, but was retiring in poverty, and decided to have inclusion for those individuals, to have access to a more secure retirement, and this was before Social Security. So it is in the fiber of our company. And the beautiful thing is that the opportunity for us, especially here in our country, and to compete at a global level, is to make sure that we are unlocking the talent that is here. If you are in rural Oklahoma or in the inner city of Chicago, we want to make sure that we can bring the opportunity to you, because that could be the next future CEO of a company. That could be the next entrepreneur that can unlock new innovation for more jobs. And I think instead of making this such a polarized topic and making this an us and them, or making people that feel like when you look at me, there must have been a reason. You're right, there was a reason. I am good. You're right. You're right. You're right. And I would also say, like my mother, Rosie Brown, said, is when someone is doubting you, and when someone is saying things about you that do not belong to you, it's like receiving mail that went to the wrong address. You return it to sender. And so I just think that we as leaders have to get back to the fundamentals of what is DEI. You can call it whatever you want. It's talent. It's about practices in the company. It's about making sure that we are bringing everyone to the table, white men, black, everybody, to feel like we want to unlock the talent. And the only way we're going to continue to grow GDP, the only way we're going to continue to prepare ourselves for the global stage, the only way we're going to deal with issues that we never thought that we would have to deal with, and by the way, it's multifaceted right now. You better have the people at the table and give them permission to bring their perspective so that we can be as smart as we can be to understand the issue, and as importantly, come up with sound solutions. That to me is what DEI is all about, and I just think we have to do everything that we can to make sure that young people are not opting out, to make sure that different groups of people feel that these opportunities are not for them, or that someone feels like you've moved my cheese. No, we want to create the whole garden for everyone. And I think the opportunity is there for us to take. And I think anything that we do to stifle growth in our country, anything that we do to stifle young people for feeling like they can have a better tomorrow is not good for all of us. And so that is my view, and I'm proud to work for a company that has held those values for over 100 years and is part of the fiber of our existence.
Well, thank you for speaking out on that. I appreciate it. I think at this moment, sometimes people are afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing or potentially being sued, and so there is
and you
a
have
pullback.
to navigate, but there is nothing wrong with talent. But of course, you're going to understand the reality that there are real issues at play, and clearly as a company, you're going to abide by all laws, and you're going to do all of that. But there is not a law that says I cannot attract and retain the best talent in order to deliver financial results for the people that I serve. And for us, it's a serious situation. We need to have and unlock the best talent because we are a long-term investor. We have patient capital that has to go to work. We have to make sure we understand issues today and tomorrow so that people can have confidence in their retirement. Yep. So we need diverse perspectives at the table, period.
Absolutely. And to ensure that you're able to articulate how your focus on DE&I and ESG aligns with your business and organizational strategy.
Absolutely.
Right? If that's the underpinning of your strategy or a market or a consumer segment or a talent base that you need, there is absolutely.
And that's important for us. I mean, Naveen, clearly, you know, we have to manage risk and we have to take a long-term view. And that means we have to understand what are all the potential scenarios that we would need to understand in order to make sure that we're making the right decisions and the right investments for the long term of ultimately people's retirement. And so understanding ESG or any other issue, to me, is understanding risk and making sure that you know how to manage that level of risk. And I think that's, to your point, never losing sight of the main thing. And for us, we have to care about this in terms of what we do and how we do it at Naveen and at TIAA. And as a matter of principle and values as a company and talent, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that everyone feels like they can have a great career at our company and bring great value to our company.
Agreed. Managing risk also leads to great opportunity. Right?
Absolutely.
On the other side of risk is opportunity,
Absolutely.
I think. Okay, I want to switch to a conversation about how I think you've demonstrated both a humility and a vulnerability in the way that you've balanced and or juggled your life as a high-level executive, a wife, a mother, a friend,
yes.
So many things, all the things that you do. And yet it seems to me that you've done it in a way that has allowed you a freedom to move beyond societal expectations, to do it your way, to not just play by the rules, but when required, to redefine or rewrite those rules.
Yeah.
How have you done that and continue to be so successful and not only achieve the level of success that you've had, but to bring others along with you?
I mean, we're going to have real talk, right? So how many of you all have been working on work-life balance for like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Good news, it's a lie. Stop it. I've said work-life balance is a lie, and I had to learn this the hard way. You know, like many of you, we're all hyphenated. You know, your moms, dads, your sisters, uncles, aunties, friends, community leaders. And I remember when I was a young mom and I was trying to figure out work-life balance. And the reality is I was getting up in the morning, not seeing my kids, and I would drive to the bus, commuter bus, take the commuter bus from New Jersey to New York, then walk or take a taxi into the office. And by the time I got home, my kids would be asleep. And I remember one night I was at the Port Authority, and I don't know if you've ever been at the Port Authority when you're catching the very last commuter bus. Everyone was going to the casino but me. And I just broke down crying. And I called my husband, and I was just having that moment. And now my husband is a Marine, an engineer, and he's now the stay-at-home father, and he just told me, well, then quit. Now, we'll have to figure some things out, but quit. And of course, and I was like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I love my job. But at that point, I had to change my mindset. So here's what I would offer to all of you that have struggled in trying to reconcile work and life. It's a lie. Instead, I chose to live my life like a diversified portfolio. The reality is we only have 100% of ourselves, so quit telling yourself a lie. There's no such thing as 110. What? You have 100%. Then you put together your categories just like you would your financial portfolio. My categories are executive, philanthropist, mommy, wife, auntie, sister, friend, self. And you allocate. The reality is my children don't get 100% of me, they get 30%. Tell yourself the truth. By telling myself the truth, I became a more present mother. because I know when I have that time with my kids, they only have 30%. So I stopped it. Yeah, mama listening. Yep, hold on, yep, way to go, way to go. Because I told myself the truth. Just like a diversified portfolio, you're gonna deal with market volatility like life volatility. When my dad got diagnosed with cancer, I had to reallocate to being a daughter. When my brother suddenly passed away, I had to allocate my portfolio to not just being a daughter, but being a sister and being an auntie. You give yourself permission to reallocate because there will be market and life volatility. Sometimes you have to short the stock. I'm gonna let y'all marinate on that when it comes to life. But here is the point. Everything that matters to me is in my portfolio. And so yes, there will be volatility. There will be sometimes aspects of my portfolio is not yielding the highest return. There are times where I do not feel like I am a great mommy, like now, because I've been traveling a ton. But I know over time, I'm a very good mother. There are days where I might feel like I'm letting my amazing team down. But over time, I believe I'm a great leader. If you live your life like a diversified portfolio, just like you do with your money, over time, you will outperform this thing called life because everything that matters to you is in your portfolio. You will never put everything with 100% allocation in with your money, no matter how good that stock is. Therefore, there is not one thing that gets 100% of me because I am more than a CEO, I'm more than a mommy, I'm a lot of things, and they do not get 100%. But collectively within that allocation, I give it 100% of what I have. It has given me permission to say no. It has given me permission to give me confidence and grace. And so live your life like a diversified portfolio. Over time, you'll outperform. There will be life volatility, but you will live a joyful life because everything that matters to you is in your allocation.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful. Here's to a joyful life. To a joyful life.